Hi Year 1, it's Miss Higgins here. You can't see my face because instead we're looking at our world map here. Now, Barnaby Bear sent me a message to ask me about all the things we learnt last term, about the world, about the continents, and about the different countries he visited. And I've forgotten a lot of it, so I wondered if you could help me. So the first thing I wanted to do is remember all the continents. Now I know that you are brilliant at all the different continents, but this is a slightly different map that we were looking at before. So let's have a look. Okay, who thinks they know what this continent might be? Can you see me point to it? This big one up here. What do you think it is? It's North America. So the one beneath it, the one lower than North America, what do you think that one might be? That's right, South America, because it is south of North America. Then this one, this is the one that we live in. What continent do we live on? Europe, that's right, well done. Okay, and below Europe, there's another continent. This is a huge continent. Do you know what this one is? Africa. Then we've got another really big continent. Who knows what this one's called? Asia. Then down here we've got a continent that's got two names. So sometimes we hear different people call it different things. So some people call it Australia, some people call it Oceania. And then the last one is this really cold continent at the bottom. That's right, Antarctica. Okay, so we visited these continents with Barnaby Bear. Can you remember the countries that we visited? Now, I've got to help us some labels here. So let's have a look which countries they were and see which countries go into which continent. So the first one is easy peasy lemon squeezy. It is Antarctica. You might not be able to see the word there, but it is Antarctica. Now we know that Antarctica isn't a country because there are no countries in Antarctica. It is just a continent. So I know and you know that it can go down there. Now, what do we know about Antarctica? We know that it's very cold. We know that it doesn't have its own money. And we know that there are no countries in the continent of Antarctica. And we know it takes a really long time to get there. Have a think if there's anything else you know about when we visited Antarctica with Barnaby Bear. Okay, the next one is Brazil. You probably can't see the words there, but it's Brazil. Now, what continent was Brazil in? It's not in the continent that we live on, I know that. It's not in Europe. And I know it's not in Antarctica, because we've done that one. I'm pretty sure it's not in Australia or Oceania. Where do you think it is? Or I remember, it's in South America. Brazil is this really big country here in South America. Now, some of the things I remember that Barnaby Bear taught us about Brazil is that it has the Christ the Redeemer statue. I remember that you guys all remembered that as well. And people in Brazil, they speak Portuguese. I do remember that. If there's anything else that you remember, maybe write it down in a sentence. You can send it to Mrs. Khan and she'll be able to pass it on to me. All right, let's move on to the next one. The next country that we have is France. Now, I remember about France, or they eat something, don't they, in France? Can you remember what it was? Snails and frogs' legs. We saw pictures, didn't we? So that's what they eat in France. What continent is it in? Is it in North America? No, I don't think so. Is it in Africa? No, I don't think so. Is it in Asia? No, I don't think so. Is it in Europe? Yes, France is the country that's just there. This is England, the United Kingdom where we live, and France is just across the English Channel, and it's there. It's quite a big country compared to us. Right, let's put our France label in there. Now, I remember when we were learning about France from Barnaby Bear, we learned how to say hello in French, the language they speak in France. So to say hello, we say bonjour, bonjour. Lovely. And to say goodbye, we say au revoir, au revoir. Brilliant. And I also remember that they use a currency, they use money called the euro. I do remember learning that. Okay, let's look at the next one. Oh, this one is Japan. Now what continent is Japan in? Is it in North America? No, I don't think so. Is it in Australia? No, I don't think so. Is it in... it's not in Antarctica. Silly Miss Higgins, we know that already. Oh, I think it's in Asia. And I remember, look, it's an island. So that means it's surrounded by water. And it's just there. Okay, so we're going to put Japan into our continent of Asia. Now, can you remember some things from Japan? I can remember in Japan, I can remember that they eat sushi with chopsticks. I remember that. And I remember that there was a really big mountain. Can you remember what it was called? I think it was called Mount Fuji, that's what it was called. I remember that from Japan. Brilliant. Oh, and I remember one more thing. Their money that they use wasn't the dollar, it wasn't the euro, it was called the yen. Yen. I remember that, the Japanese yen. All right, we've got some other ones left. This one is Canada. Now, where is Canada? What continent is the country of Canada in? We know it's not Asia, we know it's not Europe, we know it's not South America. Could it be Africa? No. Now, Africa's quite near the equator. Lots of the countries in Africa are quite near the equator. And I remember that Canada could be quite cold. Africa being near the equator, that definitely means it's hot in Africa. Look at this, North America. I see. Canada is up here, so it's quite far away from the equator, which means it's a bit colder. Okay, Canada definitely goes there. Can you remember anything about Canada? Well, we can remember that the climate is quite cold. I remember that they use the Canadian dollars for their money. And I can remember that they have something called poutine, which is chips and gravy and cheese. Oh, it sounded really, really nice. I do remember that. All right, I've got one more here. So I've got Australia. Now this one's easy peasy, orange squeezy, as Yahya would say. Okay, I know that Australia, the country, is in Australia, the continent, which is also called Oceania sometimes. So there we are. I know that Australia is a huge country, really, really, really big. And I know that they have kangaroos there. We learned that in our science lessons. And I know that actually it can be quite warm there. The climate is quite hot as well. Okay. All right, so we've got Canada is in North America. The country of Brazil is in South America. The country of France is in Europe. The country of Japan is in the continent of Asia. The country of Australia is in the continent of Oceania. And Antarctica doesn't have any countries. It is just a continent. But we've missed one out. Which one haven't we visited a country from? Which continent have we missed out? That's right, Africa. We haven't done anything about a country that is in Africa. Let me tell you a secret. Miss Higgins was going to teach you about a country in Africa, but we had to close our schools, so we didn't get a chance. So maybe when we go back to school, or maybe by a video, we'll see, Miss Higgins is going to do a lesson all about a country in Africa. And I'm going to tell you the country. It's called Ethiopia, and it's just on the side of Africa here. It's really quite big. It's 5 times the size of England. So it's quite a big country. I'm going to tell you all about Ethiopia, and Barnaby Bear is going to help me. But I think we're going to have to wait for a little while to learn about that. So for the time being, keep practicing all your different continents and keep remembering all the countries that we learnt about from Barnaby Bear. And just like always, if you've got anything that you want to send to us, anything that you've remembered that we learnt about these countries, send them to Mrs. Khan and she'll decide if they're good enough to go up onto the web page so that everybody can see them. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.